Hi everybody, welcome to our next demo video on perspective. Here I made a little SketchUp model with some architectural forms showing the difference between orthographic vision and perspective vision. Here these forms are shown in orthographic. You can see the edges are all parallel where the forms are in fact in life parallel. And here I am switching to perspective viewing. You can see those lines, although we know these forms are square or rectangular, and we know those lines in real life would be parallel, here they're shown in perspective, and we can see that those angles are in fact different. Linear perspective is a drawing system which helps mimic human vision as accurately as possible. That means that as things get farther away from a viewer, or a picture plane in this case, they appear to get smaller in scale. And I'm going to do a little bit of a test here with my architectural objects. I'm going to carry a bunch of parallel lines all the way, sort of extend them. So watch me here as I extend these lines. We'll see that on all parallel edges, they seem to want to converge in a certain way. If I carried them all the way to the horizon line, all of these lines would converge at something called a vanishing point. So a vanishing point is really this point, it's an abstraction that we place at infinity out there somewhere on the horizon, where if we were to extend the lines of our architecture, of our vision, of really anything that we see, if we were to take that distance to infinity, things tend to converge in this certain way. Now, let's talk a little bit more about how we can use this to our advantage in a drawing. Say that we have a still life. Perspective even influences still lifes. Sorry for my baby babbling in the background. But let's take some measurements off of this. We could do this with straight angle finding, but what we would immediately know from this is once we take some of those major angles, check this out, a vanishing point starts to emerge. Now we can see to any of the objects inside the still life converge to that. It seems some of them do, not all of them, but the ones that are parallel. We can determine from that that this is in fact a vanishing point in this still life, and that helps us establish where the horizon line might be. I guess somebody had some strong feelings about that. Now let's take a look at what perspective can do for us in an interior space. Now we have a small little still life in this mock-up that I've made in SketchUp here on that cube, and we've got some real world looking objects like stairs and chairs and windows and things like that, but it's within the context of a larger architectural space. Here you can see me doing a very similar thing. I'm following the lines not necessarily of the still life itself, but of the architecture that I'm surrounded by in this room. Here I'm following the edges where the walls meet the ceiling and the walls meet the floor. I'm also following the base of that cube, as well as a few other things, this divider. Even I'll get to the chairs here. Now when you have a more complicated object that's not, say a cube, how do we do that in perspective? Well, this is a good way. Remember the boxing in method? SketchUp, when you select an object like this, just naturally puts a bounding box around it. And that is a great idea for us to see how a more complex object does indeed follow the rules of perspective. Now, what if you have an object that is not lined up with the larger edges of your space or your other forms, like this chair? That chair is placed on sort of a 45-degree angle, unlike this chair which lines up with the wall. That's sort of a special case, but the vanishing points do work similarly. They just extend somewhere else. For the purposes of this tutorial, we'll leave that alone for now, and we can remind ourselves that we have the tool of angle finding if there's ever something that breaks from the mold like this. Okay, so here is the space that I'll be using for our demo drawing. I'm just going to do it in graphite pencil because that's what you guys will be working with this week. We're not considering value in these perspective drawings just yet. We're going to work our way up to that once we get the fundamentals down of finding vanishing points, finding all these angles, finding the horizon line, etc. So I begin here with a very quick gesture drawing. Although I'm speeding this up, note that the first things that I'm really going after here are the edges of the room where the walls meet the ceiling and floor, and I'm being very specific to try to find those angles quite exactly in my gesture drawing. That's earlier than the underdrawing, just because we want to get things in their sort of correct place before we take a million measurements. That way we can have a full composition and it can be sort of prepared for us to get into the real nitty gritty once we have the basics of the space in place. Now, I have students every year in Drawing 1 saying, I can't find my vanishing point. I don't know where it is. Remember, your vanishing point won't be immediately obvious, even in a 1-point drawing, which is the simplest version of linear perspective. You have to find your vanishing point by angle finding. And remember, in this case, I tried to angle find where the walls meet the floor and ceiling because they seemed like large, very reliable angles. And I knew that they were all going the same direction in real life. They're all parallel because my room is square. And I was able to extend those points almost to infinity. And where they met in the center of my drawing, that is my vanishing point. I mark it with that little dot and it becomes my gospel for this entire drawing. Some of the other objects, like the table and the paintings on the right side of the composition, finding that vanishing point and sticking to it will be incredibly useful as I move into the finished quality stage of my drawing. Now that I have the whole understructure in and knocked back, I can approach the details in contour line and really get a nice finish to the whole thing. One of the things you'll notice is for this drawing and for these perspective drawings in pencil is that I'm not using a ruler. While a ruler is very useful for getting accurate lines, sometimes it can make things feel a little bit mechanical, and we want you to get some experience trying to freehand these long straight lines just on your own. It's a learned skill to be able to get something, but something that is vaguely straight, but it's also not massively important that it's perfect. And again, for a hand-drawn image in perspective, we're really not looking for the perfect necessarily or the exactly representational. We're looking for you to build the skill of taking things towards a vanishing point, of following receding lines, of correct angle finding, and of expanding your horizons of what drawing can do for you. For right now, that about sums it up. I will just finish this drawing here and throw some music on, and I will talk to you guys more about it in class. Thanks for watching.